Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you're watching this video lecture. After the discussion in chapter 4 related to the theories of international trade in unit 1 and also different instruments of trade policy in unit 2, let's move on to unit 3 of chapter 4, that is related to trade negotiations. So what are trade negotiations usually? Naturally, we are talking about international trade negotiations are those which are aimed at formulation of international trade rules. Because when we are looking at the international trade among various nations about the goods and services, that has to happen with certain set rules. And these international trade negotiations try to formulate such international trade rules. And of course, since they involve too many countries and too many products and services, they are very complex, interactive processes engaged by the countries having competing objectives. Naturally, any country would like to have their own objectives achieved more than the objectives of the other country. And like any two businesses compete with each other, any two countries also will compete with themselves for achieving better domination and better deal and naturally better financial resources raised through international trade. So all the countries will have some competing objectives. Then somebody has to compromise. There has to be some negotiation so that everybody will agree on to certain set rules. Otherwise, this entire international trade becomes a chaos. So that is why the structure which tries to facilitate international trade in a reasonably scientific and predetermined manner is what is very important for international trade, without which it will be like a kind of heavy traffic road without traffic lights. No control, people will be going haphazard because everybody has a competing objective of reaching their destination early, and that might even result accidents. In international trade, sometimes even that can result wars. Not just the trade wars, even political wars. So that is why this trade requires a certain set of principles and guidelines which most of the countries should follow. And these type of trade negotiations are, one way we can say, are a side by side process, like United Nations, which is one of the organizations for facilitating the political debate between among countries. For trade related aspects, there is a parallel structure. That's what we are looking at, not anything related to United Nations organizations we are going to look at here. But this is a kind of parallel thing that happens simultaneously. On one side, countries should have peace and prosperity and friendly terms at least among themselves. And if there is anything like a dispute between them, United Nations organizations is there to facilitate some negotiations between them. Same way, some organization, some structure, some rules should be there to facilitate negotiations among the countries related to the international trade also. That's what is the purpose of these trade negotiations. Of course, these things can happen in the form of regional trade agreements. That can be agreements between the countries. Let us say two countries entered into an agreement about their trade between themselves only two countries, let us say A and B, entered into an agreement. That's a kind of bilateral agreement. That has nothing to do with entire international trade. It is only between them. That is according to the agreed procedures, policies, these two countries will trade between themselves. That is one way of trade negotiations, which also happens and which has its own structure, and different organizations are there at regional level, like BRICS, etc. ASEAN, BRICS, European Union, these are all part of that. And at a world level, global level, the general agreement on tariffs and trades was there earlier, which almost was there for many decades, serving the purpose of a common platform for international trade negotiations. And later, after the GATT is almost dismantled, World Trade Organization has been formed in Switzerland, Geneva, which is now currently operational and very active in various aspects related to international trade. So World Trade Organization definitely is not just related to one country or two countries. It is related to almost all the world, who are all its members in member nations, which actually is almost every country in the world is a member nation in WTO now. GATT is also a world level agreement, though we cannot call it as an organization as such, but it was a common agreement among many countries. Most of the countries in the world entered into that earlier, but now it is not operational because WTO has taken over that. RTS are different, that is regional trade agreements, which happen between couple of countries, or they can happen among a few countries in a similar region or similar objective or similar economic stature. Whatever the reason may be, countries will form some kind of small groups. That is generally what happens with RTS. And in this unit 3, we are going to discuss all the 3 different types of trade negotiations that can happen in the form of RTS, RGATT and WTO. So let us look at different types of agreements that generally happen in the international trade. Sometimes there can be unilateral trade agreements saying that country A unilaterally, voluntarily says country B that you are my friend and I will sell you goods at lower prices, or I will import from you goods at lower tariffs, like that. Some kind of benefit A may give to B unilaterally. Or when your friend is giving some benefit to you, why B will reject that? B will say, okay boss, thank you very much. But there is no bilateral agreement there. B has not asked, and there is no agreement between A and B. A unilaterally is giving some kind of benefits to B or sanctions to B, either way. That is a unilateral trade agreement. Once again, whenever we say agreements, generally agreement will be there for something beneficial. If America wants to put some sanctions on Iran, Iran and America are not going to enter into an agreement that Iran accepts, so thank you very much sir, you are sanctioning, you are putting embargo on us. Like that, they will not shake hand and sign. Na? There is a enemy situation there. So there will not be any actual agreement in that case. So when we say agreement, usually it should be a positive thing that emerges between the countries or among the countries. If it is a negative thing, it will not be generally an agreement, it will be a statement, or it will be a policy, or a stand, or a political decision taken by one country on another country. That is different. That is the negative things which will result in rupture and friction in the world trade and international trade. Let us not get into that. Let us look at the positive aspects mostly of the international trade. They can happen through unilateral trade agreements also, bilateral trade agreements also. Bilateral agreements means A will agree with B to give some benefits to B, and B will also agree with A simultaneously that they will extend some benefits to A. So 2 countries only, no more than 2 countries. Just for example, let us say India and Tibet enter into an agreement about certain goods and services to be exchanged on a preferential basis. That's a bilateral agreement. 2 countries only, but mutually they are entering into one agreement that one country and other country have certain roles, responsibilities and facilities that they are giving to the other country. Like that, bilateral agreement will happen between 2 countries. Unilateral agreement, one country will just tell the other country about what it wants or what it is going to do. Bilateral agreements, both the countries will accept what they are going to do together. Then, regional trade agreements, what we are looking at earlier as RTS is this. That is RTA, that is regional trade agreement, or it can be also called as RPTA, that is regional preferential trade agreement. This happens among multiple countries in the same region. Once again, region not necessarily means in the same geographical region. So, not necessarily. Region could be anything. But definitely it is not related to only one, 2 countries. It is related to generally more than 2 countries, forming as a group, and then they are entering into an agreement wherein they say that among ourselves we'll give preferential treatment to ourselves, like that. Some agreement can be made like that. Trading bloc is also a similar kind of situation where few countries will join together, agree together that they will act in all the interests of all the member countries in a positive manner. So that is also similar. More or less the names are different. Concept is similar, just the name will be different. So whether it is a trading bloc or a free trade area or even a customs union and even common market and economic monetary union, all these names are different. Maybe the purpose for which they are entering into agreement could be also different, but all of them indicate one thing for sure, that they involve multiple countries, some small, some big countries, and they are entering into some agreement saying that we will all have some positive relationship among us. Again, agreement generally is for a positive relationship. So that kind of various agreements are possible in the international trade. If a question is asked, you just need to write these list of the types of international trade related agreements: unilateral, bilateral, regional preferential trade agreements, trading bloc, free trade area, customs union, and common market and economic monetary union. All of them we don't need to particularly go into the details of, because most of them are similar with each other. But let us look at some of these things because they can be asked as a separate question. What are the regional trade agreements? Basically, the regional trade agreements are the groupings of the countries which are formed with the objective of reducing the barriers to trade between whom? Between only the member countries. Only member countries. Some regional trade agreement happened means some countries entered into that kind of agreement means among those member countries there will be lesser barriers to trade as agreed by themselves. So not necessarily belonging to the same geographical region, that is the main point. Not necessarily belonging to the same geographical region. So for example, if you say BRICS, BRICS includes Brazil, which is in South America, Russia, which is in Europe, India, Asian country, and China, Asian country, South Africa, African country. Almost all continents are covered except Australia. So that is not one region. It is almost like as good as international. All continents are covered. But yes, they have agreed put among themselves that they will have a reduced barriers to trade among the member countries. That's a kind of agreement that happens among the countries. If that happens among some countries put together, that is called as regional trade agreements, and they reduce the trade barriers on a reciprocal and preferential basis. By the way, for only the members of the group, they will not extend these benefits to the entire world. Only among the members of the group, they will have reduced trade barriers and trade on preferential basis. That is what is regional trade agreements. Yeah, sometimes we may think that really are they working? Really, after signing all these things, will these people really act like that? That is all different story. Implementation of any agreement will not just like that happen. America signs hundreds of agreements and it will unfollow all the agreements that it has signed. If there is any one country which has disobeyed and actually breached every signature it has made, that can be only one country, that is United States of America. Who is going to ask them? Nobody is going to question them. Even if we question them, we can only question them maybe in a newspaper article or somewhere in the television debates. Yes, even the American media also will do that. But what is the point? There is no effect on them. Who is going to enforce these agreements is difficult. So let us not get into the implementation aspects. The real cooperation between and among the countries, is it going to be actually there? And not necessarily always. Not necessarily always. So we have different types of agreements, regional groups, and different types of unions like SARC. We have SARC is a very good South Asian regions union of very many countries. Pakistan is also there in that. That does it mean that Pakistan and India are very friendly just because they are both are members of SARC? Not necessarily. But yes, if at all there is any some discussion, then debate and discussion, some kind of talking and all that will reduce the tensions is the objective. Whether it will really do or not, that all depends upon various international political and business situations. So we cannot predict them and we cannot always assume that whatever the agreements or whatever the unions which have been formed will be always effective. At least the objective is to bring effectiveness, objective is to bring solidarity and friendship. Nobody will enter into agreements to fight. Fighting happens when the agreement is broken. But that is an exceptional story. Normally, these are all the agreements which are made with a positive thought of reducing the trade barriers and treating the other member countries on preferential basis. That's what is regional trade agreements all about. And these RTAs, some of them cover only tariffs and other border measures. Only tariffs means, okay, customs duty from your country, I will reduce. Like that, if it is talking, generally those are called in the international scenario shallow agreements. Only up to the border only they think about. Means if some country exports the goods, let us say South Africa exports certain goods to us, we are importing them. If we have an agreement with them bilaterally or even as a part of the regional trade agreement, maybe we'll give some kind of preferential treatment to South Africa as part of that agreement. That means we may have a lesser customs duty charged to the goods which are imported from South Africa. But this is only restricted up to the border. After the border, what happens? That is different story. So in that case, tariffs is the only thing or a matter of concern which the RTAs cover. Then those type of agreements are called shallow agreements. And the RTAs which cover the larger set of policy areas at the border and behind the border also, they are called as deep agreements. Again, which is shallow, which is deep, we don't know. That the countries themselves and the heads of the countries who actually sign those agreements, they will know that. But our job is to understand the technical terms. First of all, what is a regional trade agreement? Then what is a shallow agreement and what is a deep agreement? Shallow agreement is that which covers mostly only the tariffs and other border measures. That's all. It does not go beyond the border. Deep agreements are those where it will cover the larger set of policy areas, not just at the border, even behind the border also. Such kind of agreements are called deep agreements. So that is the two categories of regional trade agreements, we can say. Now we used another word called free trade area. What is this free trade area? Similar, once again, all similar. It is a group of countries that eliminate all tariff barriers on trade with each other and retains independence in determining their tariffs with non-members. Of course, when there is an agreement between 2-3 countries, whatever they are having agreement is only among themselves. They still have the freedom to choose their tariffs and other measures about other countries who are non-members. So the agreement which makes a particular area as a free trade area within which all tariff barriers on trade are removed, but yet the countries, member countries of this free trade area are independent in determining the tariffs with other countries which are, who are non-members. And the classic example of this free trade area can be NAFTA. Full form you have to write, just NAFTA will not be good because NAFTA is also a different substance. So North American Free Trade Agreement it is called, and there are 3 member countries in that: Canada, Mexico and United States. So that is called North American Free Trade Agreement. That is an example of free trade area. Very similar once again, but only point is here they are going to eliminate all tariff barriers on trade, but still they have independence on determining the tariff barriers and tariff policies related to non-member countries. Then what is this common market and what is this economic and monetary union? Once again same, it is also a agreement among many countries where they decide upon a common market which provides for free flow of factors of production, labor and capital in addition to the free flow of outputs. So in a common market, free flow of outputs anyway will happen. In addition to that, free flow of factors of production like labor and capital also happens. Classic example of that is European Union. Within European Union, any European citizen, any citizen of any European country can just travel to any other European country. They don't need actually any visa also. Means the labor movement restrictions are not there. That is a real implementation of a common market. ASEAN and all is not real implementation, just namesake, it is a common market. But EU really is a common market because not just the flow of outputs, even factors of production also can flow very freely within that region. That is European Union example. And the member countries attempt to harmonize some institutional arrangements and commercial and financial laws and regulations among themselves. So they will have a common agreement common regulations and common financial and commercial laws also. That happens normally in the case of a common market. And there are also common barriers against non-members. So they will create a common barriers also against, not among themselves, against common non-members, they will have common barriers. So as the name itself indicates, it provides a common market for outputs as well as factors of production, and common financial and commercial laws and regulations also will be framed. Common barriers against non-members also will be there in a common market. That is the feature and that is the characteristics of common market, we can say. Then what is an economic and monetary union? Once again, European Union only is the example for that. In an economic and monetary union, members share a common currency also and macroeconomic policies. For example, European Union countries implement and adopt a single currency, euro. Euro is the currency for all the countries, member countries in European Union. So that is an example of economic and monetary union. That experiment never exactly got successful in any other areas till now. So only example what we can take of a common currency for member countries is European Union, which has a common currency of euro. So that is what economic and monetary union means. They will have common currency also and common macroeconomic policies also. That is why we are calling it economic and monetary union. These are different types of, we can say, regional trade agreements only. These are all part of the regional trade agreements only. Common market, economic and monetary union is one type of agreement. And as you can say, gathering or grouping. Free trade area is another one. In general, the regional trade agreements are many, but these are the various types of agreements that can happen in international trade in general. But by the way, so far whatever we are looking at, these are all happening between either two countries or few countries, not the entire world. Not the entire world in any of the things so far we are looking at. When we say BRICS, we are only talking about 5 countries. When we say European Union, we are only talking about maybe 30-40 member countries of the European Union, that's all. Not beyond that. These agreements will extend. That is why these are regional level, smaller agreements covering few of the member countries only. But when we move on to the entire world, there are two things which will be applicable to the entire world. And as we discussed or identified earlier, those two things are, one is GATT, other one is WTO. World Trade Organization is the latest one and most active organization as of now. We'll come to that later. Prior to that, though outdated, though it is gone, though it is not anymore there, expired, still let us just understand quickly what is GATT, because questions can come on a general description of what is the meaning of GATT and what are the reasons why the GATT is not anymore relevant. So those areas, let us just quickly go through them. GATT means what? That is called General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, that is GATT. And that provided the rules for much of the world trade for 47 years, ranging from 1948 to almost 1994. And there are 8 multilateral negotiations known as trade rounds held under the GATT auspice. That means with the support of the GATT, 8 levels of negotiations happened earlier, not now. So that is one more. This is general knowledge information only. But still, if a question comes, we should be able to write a short note. We cannot just write the abbreviation and say GATT means General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. Enough. No, it is not enough. It will not give you full marks. So what it has done, it has provided the rules for the world trade almost for 47 years, and it has resulted in 8 multilateral. It is not unilateral, it is not bilateral, it is multilateral negotiations. That is why we are covering the entire world in this case. And these things are called as trade rounds, and those were all held with the support of GATT. And the 8th round, which is called Uruguay round of 86-94, was the last round under the GATT regime, and later what emanated from that is the birth of WTO. That means GATT is obsolete, GATT is gone by Uruguay round. That was 8th round. That was the last round under GATT. And then onwards, GATT only became WTO. So GATT died, WTO born after Uruguay round. So don't write all these things, dead and born and all, for understanding purposes. GATT was there till 94, it was there, but later WTO was formed, and Doha round and other things have taken it forward from there onwards. So Uruguay round was the last round for GATT. That was the 8th round, we can say, last round. Later on, GATT is gone. Why GATT is gone? Why GATT lost its relevance? This can be a question also. Don't need to write all of them, but at least some of them we can write. First thing first, it became obsolete. It has become old. Why say why? Oh, it has become like basically obsolete and not relevant to the current world. The methodologies, rules, and were there, but maybe it was not actually really appealing to the current scenarios of requirement. So that is a one word obsolete, we can say. Not relevant anymore. Then international investments had expanded substantially, and GATT could not handle that because again its capacity was not that much. And most importantly, the intellectual property rights and trade in services were not covered by GATT. Intellectual property rights are very important, copyrights, trademarks, etc. Those were not covered by GATT. Trade in services, the GATT was mostly covering goods. Services was not covered by GATT. It required a better upgradation from that. So GATT was dismantled, WTO was formed. And other things normally like world merchandise trade increased by leaps and bounds and was beyond its scope. It could not manage. GATT could not manage the volume of the world trade that has increased by leaps and bounds during all this period of 4 or 5 decades when it was prevalent. And ambiguities in the multilateral system could be heavily exploited. So few countries take advantage of these ambiguities, take the advantage of loopholes, and other countries might suffer. So that could not be sorted out and it could not be resolved by GATT. In many cases, too much of litigation was there because of those ambiguities. And efforts on the liberalizing agricultural trade was not successful. They could not actually achieve that. So liberalizing the agricultural trade is always one of the objectives of the GATT, WTO and everybody, wherein it has not yet happened completely, but it is going towards that. So GATT could not achieve that objective. And there were inadequacies in the institutional structure itself. And the dispute settlement mechanism was not effective also. Naturally, when there is international trade, there will be disputes among the countries. So now there should be a proper dispute settlement mechanism. If it is not there, that will result in frictions and tensions rather than facilitating international trade. And GATT could not provide an efficient, effective dispute settlement system. And the institutional structure of the GATT was also not very strong. It was okay. Simply, if you just say, somebody has constructed a house, it is good. Strong house only they have constructed. When, let us say, 40 people are, let us say 4 people are staying in that house might be okay. When 40 people have come into the same house, that house is not enough. What if 400 people have come into the same house? That house cannot bear it. Though it may be a good one, whatever it is, doesn't matter. So you need a big building for all these 400 people. So that is World Trade Organization. It's not World Trade Tower, World Trade Organization. So example, for that purpose, you can just think like that. GATT was not able to cater to the needs of the increased international trade and changing scenarios, particularly in the field of services and intellectual property, which were very new. And institutional structure of the GATT was not sufficient to handle all that. And it was not a treaty, basically. Therefore, the terms of the GATT were binding only insofar as they are not incoherent with the nation's domestic rules. So GATT is only just an agreement. People sign it. After that, they forget. As long as the principles of GATT are not contradicting with their local rules, then only they will implement. Otherwise, they will not implement. So a lot of countries just ignored whatever they signed also, because it is not an organization, some membership and all is not there. Just people just called for a meeting. They all talked, agreed on something. A lot of signatures they did. That's all. Went home and forgot those signatures. Mostly that's what happens. So that is how it became little redundant, and later it lost its relevance. Need for a better, sophisticated and a broader organization was felt then. Naturally, that gave the birth to World Trade Organization. So what is this World Trade Organization? Basically, the principal objective of World Trade Organization is to facilitate the flow of international trade smoothly, freely, fairly and predictably. So sudden changes should not happen. This is the basic objective of World Trade Organization, and anything related to World Trade Organization question is given, you should write these things. That is the objective of WTO, which is to facilitate the flow of international trade smoothly, freely, fairly, and predictably. So that is the objective. In general, you can call it as a mission statement of World Trade Organization also. And how does it function? The WTO does its functions by acting as a forum for trade negotiations among the member governments and administering the trade agreements, reviewing the national trade policies, assisting the developing countries in trade policy issues through technical assistance, and not only that, training programs and cooperating with the other international organizations. So the entire gamut of functions of WTO are just summarized in this one paragraph. This is the essence of WTO, we can say. To facilitate, objective is to facilitate the flow of international trade smoothly, freely, fairly, predictably. And how it works is by acting like a forum for trade negotiations among the member governments, because governments can go and meet in the WTO organization, which has a head office and where there will be meetings held. All the government representatives can actually meet there. There is a place at which this WTO functions. So it is a forum for trade negotiations. And WTO will administer the trade agreements also. It will review the national trade policies of member countries also, looking at whether they are detrimental to the international trade. If so, WTO gives a warning that no, this type of trade policies are not acceptable. And assisting developing countries in the trade policies issues. That's what they say, actually, because that is one of the objectives and the way WTO should operate, though the reality is a different story. Through what? Technical assistance and training programs, and also cooperating with the other international organizations like United Nations Organization. So these are all the functions of WTO in a nutshell. Objectives of WTO. What is WTO in a nutshell can be understood from that. And what are the guiding principles of WTO? Once again, we are not going into whether they are really followed, whether WTO really is able to achieve all these objectives, whether it is really effective. Those things are all different. Is it really protecting the interests of the developing countries, or is it protecting the interest of developed countries? Those are all debatable social issues and international political issues. Let us not get into that. As far as economics for finance paper is concerned, international trade chapter is concerned, within that, looking at the trade negotiations unit, we are looking at what is ideally WTO supposed to do. That is only from, once again, a theoretical perspective. What is there in the books? What is that they have defined as their objectives and how it actually functions according to their objectives. So that is only one, once again, not from a reality perspective. Reality is something which definitely will be different from what we learned from the books. But our botheration is not about the reality. That will be separate. Nothing to do with learning of these things under a course. So in this course, we have to learn the things what WTO is guided by. So what are the guiding principles of WTO? So all good things only, like we have a constitution in India. Every good thing only will be there. This is what we are supposed to achieve: equality, fraternity, justice, right to education, right to speech, right to information, right to food. So many things. Does it mean each and everything is actually achieved on a daily basis throughout the year? Not necessarily, not normally. So that is a different story. So, but should there be something as a guiding principles? Yes, there should be. And these are the major guiding principles for WTO. You can say this is the constitution of WTO. What it aims to achieve. These are the aims of WTO. What it aims to achieve is this. First of all, that ultimately, whatever WTO does should result in trade without discrimination, and most favored nation treatment should be given to all member countries. So we'll come to that later, but very important term this is. MFN status it is called, most favored nation. All member countries of WTO are most favored nations only for other countries. There cannot be any discrimination among themselves. So that's what WTO tries to achieve. I don't have to tell every time. Is it really happening? So will every country treat each other country as most favored nation? No, it will never. But that is the objective. That is the final objective. When we will achieve it, we don't know. United Nations organizations wanted to achieve the peace. Does it mean there were no wars after United Nations? There are wars. So many people were killed, so much of invasions happened, so many wars happened. That does not mean United Nations organization is useless, we will dismantle it. It will try something. Same way WTO also tries something to facilitate the trade without discrimination and having a most favored nation statement and treatment for each of the member countries. Then there is another principle that is called national treatment principle. That means the country which is importing should not discriminate the products which are domestically made and which are imported. So whether a particular country has imported from other country, those imported goods should not be discriminated against when compared with the domestically made products. So any import also should be treated as if it is also manufactured nationally, as if. That is called as national treatment principle. We'll come to these two things separately also, but the concept is clear. That's what is very important guiding principles of WTO. Free trade should happen, predictability should happen, quantitative restrictions should not be there, generally they should be prohibited. Quantitative restrictions means only this much you can import, only this much you can export, like that. Ideally they should not be there. Competitiveness should increase. Tariffs only should be acting like a legitimate measures of protection, but not to really punish the other countries. So legitimately, let us say if there is other country which is trying to resort to dumping, then I will resort to anti-dumping duty. No problem. That's a legitimate measure. To that extent, it is okay. But once again, who will decide whether it is legitimate or not legitimate? India banned TikTok. India banned PUBG. India might ban some products or services which are coming from China. Is it legitimate or not? India will decide and China will decide. China already filed a case in WTO. India will provide its own arguments. What happens to that? That is all different. That is real life. We are not bothered about that. But the WTO's job is to take that at least as a dispute, and negotiations will be facilitated between the countries from a trade perspective. Again, we are not looking at military and all. That is all different job. WTO is only looking at trade, basically the business. Then there should be transparency in decision making. That is a guiding principle. Ideally any business or organization or government should have transparency in the decision making so that everybody knows what actually is happening. It should not be like hidden things. And a progressive liberalization should happen slowly throughout the world. Market access should be there for most of the people and countries and other corporations. There should not be restrictions to the market access much. Lot of trade barriers should not be there. So when trade barriers are removed, market access is automatically coming. And just big names, a transparent, effective and verifiable dispute settlement mechanism should also be there. These are the various guiding principles of World Trade Organization. Very important, each of them. Points you should remember. Details, each of them we don't need to know. Some of them we will discuss in detail. So the guiding principles of WTO are firstly, to create a MFN status for all member countries, to create a NTP, to follow national treatment principle, to make sure that all countries are following the national treatment principle, to facilitate free trade, to facilitate predictability and prohibit quantitative restrictions, to increase and enhance the greater competitiveness and make sure that tariffs are used only as legitimate measures for protection, and there should be better transparency in decision making. Progressive liberalization should happen. Market access should be improved. A transparent, effective and verifiable dispute settlement mechanism should be there in the case when there are disputes between or among any of the countries. These are the guiding principles of WTO. There are so many key areas of agreements in WTO, you don't have to really by heart or remember all of them. Major ones you can generally remember. Key areas, some of them you can remember. There were areas of agreements we are looking at. Almost every area of trade there will be, naturally. There was agreement on agriculture. Yes. There was agreement on SPS measures. SPS measures we already discussed in the earlier session. Means sanitary and phytosanitary measures. There was agreement on textiles and clothing. And there was agreement on TBT, that is technical barriers to trade. We discussed that also in the earlier session. Then new things like trade related investment measures. We will discuss this, very important, called as TRIMS. Anti-dumping we already discussed. Customs valuation is something which is at a higher level, final level we will understand. But we know customs valuation is important, particularly when there are ad valorem duties. Customs valuation principles have to be uniform. suddenly they cannot be changed and the duties cannot be increased or decreased by changing the customs valuation. So there should be some common principles which are applicable throughout the world. One country cannot unilaterally say, oh, my customs valuation is completely different. I will do highest valuation that is possible by having a different principle for valuation. And thereby what happens effectively, the total customs duty payable by the exporters will become more. So there should be some principles on customs valuation. That is one agreement that the WTO will take. These are all areas of different agreements. So many of them are there. Pre-shipment inspection is supposed to happen for ensuring the quality and meeting the standards. Rules of origin are there, and same way rules of origin means from where it is coming, which country is the origin country has to be mentioned, and such kind of rules of origin have to be also governed by the agreements of WTO. Import licensing procedures in general which are applicable throughout the world, subsidies, export subsidies, etc., and countervailing measures taken by the countries, and safeguards trade in services. Trade in services is one thing which GATT did not cover. WTO covers that. And very important one, TRIPS, trade related intellectual property rights. That is another area WTO particularly focuses upon. Then settlement of disputes happens in DSU, dispute settlement mechanism that is called, and trade policy review mechanism, and then plurilateral trade agreements on trade in civil aircraft and government procurement. So many areas. Which area is left here? Almost every area is there. Agriculture, services, civil aircraft, government procurement, and all these areas are covered. Textiles and clothing, these are all covered. SPS measures anyway cover mostly the food related industry. And valuation related procedures related things are also there, like TBT, technical barriers to trade, customs valuation, anti-dumping mechanisms, pre-shipment inspection, rules of origin, licensing procedures for importing, subsidies and countervailing duties, etc. Then TRIPS and TRIMS are there, which are trade-related investment measures and trade-related intellectual property rights. These are all one side. Trade policy review mechanism also should be there. There should be some common mechanism which reviews the trade policy of different countries and identifies if there are any inconsistencies with the overall objectives of WTO. So that is also there. And most importantly, the dispute settlement mechanism is also there, wherein if any member countries have disputes, they can settle them by approaching and complaining to that kind of unit, dispute settlement unit you can call it. So these are the areas of agreements majorly that happen in WTO. Some of the areas and some of the key terms we will discuss. One of them is most favored nation. What is MFN? Very important theory questions. These are all naturally. Each of them can be asked as a 2 marks or 3 marks question. You should write exactly the key words related to that particular term. So what is MFN? That means the most favored nation. That means the country which is the recipient of this treatment must nominally receive equal trade advantage as what most favored nation by the country granting such treatment. So there is one country which is granting the treatment and there is another country which is receiving that treatment. So one country should grant the treatment of MFN, other country will receive the treatment of most favored nation. That means what? There will be equal trade advantage to both the countries. That is what is most favored nation treatment. Once again, can it happen unilaterally? Yes. Can it happen bilaterally? Yes. Regionally? Yes. Possible. But as far as WTO is concerned, under the rules of WTO, a member country, any member of WTO is not allowed to discriminate between the trade partners. And if a special status is granted to one trade partner, that country is required to extend it to the all members of WTO. That is the main point here related to MFN. In other words, every member of WTO is MFN to one another. India cannot say, I am giving MFN status only to Bhutan or Sri Lanka. I will not give MFN status to Pakistan. If India and Pakistan both are WTO members, which they are, India cannot discriminate between Sri Lanka and Pakistan when it comes to trade. That is a rule of WTO. Once again, already some of you are thinking, it will not happen like that now. I know that, everybody knows that. Rules are rules. We are talking rules. Nobody follows, who does not follow. That is none of our business. We don't follow. America doesn't follow, Pakistan doesn't follow, China doesn't follow, none of the member countries follow. WTO daily will keep on talking about something. Like World Health Organization daily updates something. Who cares? World Health Organization told, look, Corona and COVID is a pandemic, not just an epidemic, it is a pandemic somewhere in February 2020. Who cared? Did we care? Nobody cared. We did not even look at the definition of pandemic. Epidemic is different, pandemic is bigger than that. We never cared about it. So these organizations will be there, they try to do something, let them be there. What is there for us to do? Either we can sympathize with them or we cannot even just really take them seriously when our daily lives are there. But for us they are important because they are our short note questions. So only look at from theoretical perspective. As per WTO rules, no member country can discriminate the other member country. If a special status is granted to one trade partner, the same status has to be extended to the all members of the WTO. So simply speaking, in a nutshell, MFN is a non-discriminatory trade policy because it ensures equal trading among all WTO member nations rather than exclusive trading privileges. So two countries, friendly countries only are giving favors to each other and one another is not allowed as per WTO. Once again, there is no rule or no guarantee that this will be followed. It is never followed, 100% pakka. But still, there is a rule. That's what MFN actually is supposed to be. But actually what happens, some people will give MFN status to their own friend countries and they will remove MFN status to the enemy countries. WTO, the country which has been removed will go to WTO and files a case against this country which has removed it. Oh, it will run for a few years. Later what happens, it is all different. But what is the status is very important. Most favored state, most favored nation. So according to WTO, every country is the most favored nation for other country. It should be like that. Then all countries are equal. All countries will have equal rights and equal kind of status when it comes to the international trade, which is a non-discriminatory trade policy, and it will not let member countries to take among themselves certain exclusive trading privileges. So it will try to prevent such kind of exclusive trading privileges extended to only few countries. If any such privileges are given to one country, they should be extended to all countries of the world which are all members of WTO. That means every country in the world is a most favored nation to other. That's what it means. Once again, theoretically, as per rule. Same way, WTO aims for national treatment principle. Just we discussed this earlier only. What is national treatment principle? Of course, it is a complementary principle to the MFN principle. This also helps to be non-discriminatory basically. So a country should not discriminate between its own and foreign products, services or nationals. Very super. If that is the case, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, everybody, entire world is. Why should we have countries then? Better there will be one country in the world. If all these things really happen, it will not happen. People fight. People are people. There will be no discrimination among the different nationals. Is too idealistic. Within country also, from person to person also, region to region also, skin color to skin color also, caste, creed, religion, whatnot are there. That much discrimination is there. But the ideal of WTO is just that. No country should discriminate other countries' products also, services also, nationals also. That is the idea of national treatment principles. In other words, like the Walden saying goes, you love your neighbor like you love yourselves. Like that, some principle is there in Bible. It seems you love your neighbor like you love yourselves. That means you give the same treatment to the other countries like you give the treatment to your own nationals. That is called simply national treatment principle. Don't write all this Bible and all. That's for understanding purposes. For instance, for understanding purposes, this you can write. Once imported apples reach Indian market, let us say. We imported apples from Fiji. Fiji apples reached Indian market. Before they are reaching Indian market, we can have 100 rules on them. That is a different story. But they reached Indian market. Here, we cannot discriminate those apples, and we should treat them also at par in respect of marketing facilities and opportunities, product visibility, or any other aspect with locally produced apples. So let us say government passes a rule that locally produced apples and all should be shown, displayed well with full red color and all. Nice apples are all there. Shimla apples, Kashmir apples should be displayed well. Fiji apples should be covered in a black cover and they should be just hidden. Like that, if a rule is passed by government, is it fair? It is not fair. So product visibility should not be hampered. Government should not interfere in that and try to discriminate between the Indian apples and imported apples once they reach our land. Before they reach our land, we can have them higher customs duties, whatnot. We can say that Fiji apples have a lot of insecticides. That is, we don't like that. We take SPS measures. We will tell. So how many things we can do? No limit for the international trade drama. But once they come, then it is not good to discriminate them. They have to be treated at par with the domestic local products. That's what is called national treatment principle. That means treat the foreign products and services also as we treat the local products and services. Simple one-liner for national treatment principle could be that. So MFN is one of the very important principles of WTO. Idealistic. Once again, both of them are idealistic but not practical. But still, that principle WTO promotes. Every country should extend MFN status to the other country. It cannot discriminate one country from other country. So understand the difference between these two. In case of MFN, there is no local goods involved. A country cannot discriminate between B country and C country. It has to give the same status to B also, C also, if all three are WTO members. So there is no discrimination among the member countries of WTO. That is MFN. National treatment principle is different. Here, A country cannot discriminate between the goods from B country and the goods made within the domestic market of A country. There is no C involved here. So that is why the equal treatment and non-discriminatory treatment of domestic goods and services with the imported goods and services is what is national treatment principle. Then another very important, very crucial aspect of this international trade, particularly in WTO, discussions are there, debates are there, so much of controversy is also there. Let us not get into that. For us, it is a 2-3 marks question. What is TRIPS? That is trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. That is called TRIPS. And India, being a member country, has signed that intellectual property rights, trade related aspects of intellectual property rights should be protected. So what this agreement stipulates is the MFN countries and the MFN treatment and the national treatment for intellectual properties also, not just for goods and services. This MFN treatment and the national treatment should be given for intellectual properties also. Simple. You extend both of them, MFN as well as national treatment principle. Extend both of them to intellectual properties. That is called as TRIPS. What are intellectual properties? We know copyrights, trademarks, geographical indications, whatever, industrial designs, patents, IC layout designs, integrated circuits, and undisclosed information, whatever they are. So that is intellectual properties. They should also be extended MFN treatment and national treatment, not just goods and services. That's what TRIPS stipulates. And in addition, it requires the member countries to maintain high levels of intellectual property protection and administer a system of enforcement of such rights. That is what WTO requires, instructs, and guides, maybe requests also the member countries to maintain the high levels of intellectual property protection. For example, just like that, somebody starts a cool drink called Coca-Cola already, which is there in the America. Coca-Cola is not a head office of India or Indian company. It is not that. Now it is there, but imagine earlier also somebody wanted to start another cool drink with the brand of same Coca-Cola. Should it be allowed? Will the Indian government allow that? Or will the Indian government say, it's okay, our Indian is bringing a fantastic idea and he is coming up with this cool drink, so let us allow him with this brand name also. Will it say that? No, it will not say that. It has to protect the intellectual property rights of Coca-Cola also, even though Coca-Cola is not an Indian company. Why? Because India is also a member of WTO. Every member of WTO has to protect the intellectual property rights of not only its own country domestically, and even other countries' intellectual property rights also should be protected. That is the agreement of TRIPS, we can say. And of course, it also stipulates procedures for the settlement of disputes related to the agreement. So many disputes are there. There are disputes between Apple, Samsung already, and there are disputes between countries also, and there are disputes between even big companies and small people like farmers also. Recently, I think last year, Pepsi, which was manufacturing Lay's chips, from the potatoes which are cultivated by few farmers, has filed a case on the farmers for more than 1 crore rupees as a damages. And farmers didn't understand what happened, what mistake they did. Actually, when Pepsi gave them the potatoes to be sown, and which will be again as a seed what the Pepsi has given, once the potato is cultivated from that seed, that has to be entirely coming back to the Pepsi. That was the agreement. Farmers do not know that, they are not that literate and all. So what they did, some of the produce what they manufactured, they have kept it aside and used it for next crop. Then Pepsi observed that and filed a case because they have violated the agreement. Farmers, as per law, violated the intellectual property rights of Pepsi because that is Pepsi's potato, as per their claim. Some particular breed that they use for the manufacturing of their own chips like Lay's and all. So the case was there. Whether they will win the case, whether the farmers will lose the case, that is all different story. But intellectual property rights are very tricky subject. Disputes are common among big nations also, big companies also. WTO provides a certain kind of procedures for the settlement of such disputes related to this intellectual property rights. That is the essence of TRIPS, trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. Then after TRIPS, there is TRIMS that comes. Okay, TRIMS. This is called trade related investment measures. That is called TRIMS. These are the measures in relation to the cross-border investment. Naturally, nobody is bothered about within the country investment, that governments of that country will take care. But what about the cross-border investment? Investment coming from one country to another country. So there has to be some control and regulation on that. About that type of investment, there are certain trade-related investment measures. These are the measures. These measures stipulate that the countries receiving the foreign investments shall not impose investment measures such as requirements, conditions, and restrictions inconsistent with the provisions of the principle of national treatment and general elimination of quantitative restrictions. Again, it is all very idealistic in nature. What this agreement says and tries to achieve is the countries receiving foreign investment should not put any restriction on that investment. They should allow it freely. There should not be any conditions attached to that acceptance of that foreign investments. There should not be any restrictions, and there should be the foreign capital also should be treated as if it is the local capital, because the national treatment should be extended not only to the goods, not only to the services, not only to the intellectual properties, even to the money. So the point simply, if we see, national treatment should be extended to money also, it should be extended to capital also, it should be extended to investment also. If that is the case, that kind of measures are called trade related investment measures, and in general there should not be any quantitative restrictions also, they should be eliminated. For example, this happens in India, though it is against this TRIMS principle. Measures such as local content requirements and trade balancing requirements should not be applied on the investing corporations, but they do. As we discussed earlier, IKEA, for example, starting business in India, has to procure 30 to 40% within India. Without that condition, on that condition only, that has been allowed to invest in India. Same logic applies to Amazon, same logic applies to Walmart and many other multinational corporations, where they have to procure certain percentage within India. They cannot 100% import the goods and sell in India. No, not allowed. Means India puts certain restrictions like that. Is it in line with the TRIMS? No. TRIMS is exactly opposite of this. TRIMS says such kind of restrictions, such kind of requirements, conditions should not be there. That's what TRIMS says. Do we follow? We don't follow. Some others follow, nobody follows. Some people follow, some people don't follow. If the person who is aggrieved party, if they go to the WTO, that will be a dispute, that will go separately. So leave that apart. This is only just something which tells the member countries not to put restriction on the investment inflow. Simply speaking, that is the objective of TRIMS. Trade-related investment measures should not be restrictive measures. They should be encouraging measures. That means a free flow of capital should happen anywhere from anywhere to the other country in the world. So capital flow should be very free. Free in the sense without any restrictions. That is the idea of TRIMS. So many restrictions on the investment should not be imposed by the local governments. In other words, the government of any country should give equal treatment, national treatment to the imported capital also. Imported capital is nothing but foreign investment. So that is called TRIMS, trade related investment measures. Then, as we have discussed, so many rules that WTO has made, but nobody follows. So there will be disputes, natural. There will be disputes. Every country should extend other country MFN. Will it really happen? No. Every country should give national treatment to the other countries also, goods, services, even financial products, even capital, even trade intellectual properties. Will it give? No. Disputes will come. So rules are there, violations are also there, disputes will also be there. So naturally, this understanding on the rules and procedures governing the settlement of disputes understanding, we can say, or agreement. Instead of agreement, we are using the word understanding. This provides the common rules and procedures for the settlement of disputes related to the WTO agreements. Name itself tells that dispute settlement mechanism. So these rules and procedures for settling the disputes related to the WTO agreements is called DSU. If the short note is asked as DSU also, it should write the same. Then what is the aim of this? It aims to strengthen the dispute settlement procedures by prohibiting unilateral measures. Unilateral measures should not be taken by the countries, again ideally. And establishing the dispute settlement panels. Some people will be selected as panel members, and those will be hearing the dispute from both the sides, whatever the arguments from both the sides are, and basically whose reports are automatically adopted. And not only that, setting the time frame for a dispute settlement. Dispute settlement cannot go years and years together. That will be dangerous. And as we popularly say, justice delayed is justice denied. That applies to dispute settlement also. So as quickly as possible, the dispute settlement should happen, and establishing the appellate body. In other words, if any of the parties is not happy, not satisfied with the verdict of this panel, which is dispute settlement panel, they should have the right to go to next body, that is appellate body. All these things, who will establish? WTO in its DSU, that is the dispute settlement understanding on rules and procedures. It has established such type of procedures, and it has prohibited the unilateral measures. Dispute settlement panels, how they have to be established, such rules have been laid down, and time frame for dispute settlement has to be kept also, and appellate body has to be established also under DSU. That is all the part of dispute settlement mechanism of World Trade Organization. That is dispute settlement mechanism. Now another short question may be there. What is the Doha round and what is the significance of Doha round? As we have discussed earlier, the 8th round of GATT was Uruguay round. With that, GATT is gone. So naturally after the 8th round, what is the next round? That is 9th round. So 9th round is called as Doha round. Doha is a place. Uruguay is a country. Doha is a city in the country Qatar, and in which it is conducted, so it is called as Doha round. So it is the 9th round of Doha 2, and that was considered the WTO's 4th ministerial conference in Doha in November 2001. And what is the objective of this Doha round? It sought to accomplish major modifications of the international trading system through lower trade barriers and revised trade rules. All big things only. Naturally, the objective is same always, whichever the round it is. Ultimately, to lower the trade barriers and to introduce certain revised trade rules related to the international trading system was the objective of Doha round, and that has included 20 areas of trade in the Doha round. Of course, there also they could not actually agree on the agricultural produce liberalization. That is still an internationally, we can say, conflicting area or a controversial area. So other than agriculture, almost many areas of the trade have been covered in Doha round, including 20 areas. What are those and all? We don't need, but just as a short note question, if it is asked, what is the significance of that, when it has started, and it is continuing. That means Doha round means is that started as a discussion in the city of Doha. Whatever agreed there is now also valid. It is just continuing. So that is the latest round we can say that happened on the WTO discussions. Then, okay, we have a lot of things that WTO wanted to achieve, it tries to achieve, it has created some framework, agreements, lot of documentation that it has created, and consensus among the members it tries to achieve. All these things are okay, but what are the concerns about the WTO? Is WTO really a fantastic organization working as per its objectives? Is it really able to achieve the objectives? Or is it something which is falling short of what it's originally intended for? So what are the concerns about WTO? First thing first, the progress of multilateral negotiations is very slow. Natural, it's a very complex process, not that easy. Two countries are just not going to be suddenly becoming friends which are like enemies for hundreds of years. So the negotiations also in the trade matters also will be complex, natural. Slow progress of multilateral negotiations is one of the problems with this WTO and its structures. And uncertainties resulting from the regional trade agreements, they will act like a sudden changers. So WTO is trying to achieve the equal stature for all the countries in the entire world. Suddenly regional trade agreements will come. 4 or 5 countries will say, we are different. We have Gulf Cooperation Council, we have SARC, we have BRICS, ASEAN, NAFTA, like these regional agreements they will make. That defy the purpose of WTO, because the WTO would like to achieve the free trade among the entire world. But these regional trade agreements create certain uncertainties that will hamper the work of WTO in general. And inadequate or negligible trade liberalization, this practically happens. WTO wishes that the trade liberalization should happen very quickly and rampantly, but that may not happen in all the countries due to many reasons, including political reasons locally. And those which are specific concerns to the developing countries, this is the main point. WTO failed to really address the issues of the developing countries. So it has a big criticism saying that it is almost the puppet of developed countries. Almost. So whatever America says, WTO says. WTO did not have the guts to ask America to follow its own rules also. UNO never had the guts to ask America to follow its own resolutions. WTO never had the guts to ask America to follow its own resolutions. And all of them are signed by America. That's the beauty. If America said, no, I will not follow, it's a different story. Don't be a member of WTO, get out. Who cares? No problem. Nobody is behind you. But America is a member of WTO. It will be leading it. It will be having a lot of influence on that. It's a major shareholder. Even in IMF and World Bank, all these things are there. But it will not follow its own rules and it will not follow its own things that it has signed. And nobody can enforce that. If the same thing happens from a developing country, Bangladesh, something wrong, oh, everybody will say, oh, Bangladesh did this wrong, that wrong. So developing countries are bulldozed in WTO by the developed countries is what is one of the concerns or criticisms of WTO. And protectionism and lack of willingness among the developed countries to provide market access. Protectionism has increased, even though WTO has nothing directly to do with that. After the Donald Trump's administration took power in USA wanted to have protectionist economy rather than open economy. All the years, almost since 90s, entire world was going towards open economy. Internationalization, globalization was the mantra. Now we are all talking reverse things. We are talking about localization, Atmanirbhar Bharat, only we should have our own things. And America talks about let us make America great again. Like that, all these things are different slogans which reduce the importance of international trade and include more favor to the national goods and services. So that is protectionism, which hampers international trade. Good or bad for that country is a different story. That's a different story. Our own Indians, they will be happy when Indian government bans Chinese products, or if it bans some foreign nationals to enter our country. But if the same people are banned from America to go get out, then they will be crying, equal rights are not there, our human rights, all these things they will talk. So it is a natural thing. Human beings always want everything beneficial to them only and everything bad to the others only. But it will not happen like that. Actually, something happens somewhere in between. So problems will be there majorly because of the power that developed countries exert on the international markets, and the developed countries would like to get benefit from the other countries only rather than extending benefit to the other developing countries. That is the reality, and that is one of the biggest failures of WTO, we can say. Though it is there, it is not able to force the developed countries to be really encouraging the world trade. And there are difficulties they face in the implementing of present agreements. As I said, implementing is the big part. Agreements are super. Excellent agreements are there. Who will implement them? Very difficult. That is the biggest problem. And there is a north-south divide also. Even in the world, not just in one country, there is a divide in this WTO also. You don't have to go into those politics of that. Exceptionally high tariffs are there in some cases, which WTO is not able to really address. And tariff escalation, erosion of preferences, and difficulties with regard to adjustments. If at all there are any adjustments are to be done, it is becoming difficult. Tariff escalation means once again increasing them. Or erosion of preferences means reducing the preferences. Means what? Once again making restrictive type of international trade practices and policies which go against the principles of WTO. So WTO tells all big things. Definitely it has bigger objectives, aims, targets, and it has really covered many areas of trade and services in the world, no doubt. It has involved many countries in the world, no doubt. Lot of things it has done, no doubt. But at the same time, lot of things it cannot do also, lot of things it could not do also. Those are the concerns about WTO. That's all. With that, we can conclude this trade negotiations unit. Broadly speaking, this chapter or unit consists of what are regional trade agreements, what is GATT, a small discussion. Majorly it focuses on World Trade Organization, what are its objectives, how it functions, what are the various agreements within that, and very important terminology. What is MFN status, what is national treatment principle, like that. What are TRIPS, what are TRIMS, and what are the failures of the WTO, what are the you can say the good things about WTO also, positive things also. Positive things, all that you need to write is objectives. Objectives will be always negative, always positive. There will never be negative. Nobody will start with an objective that I want to ruin the world trade, I want the entire world to drown. No, nobody will write that objectives. No, objectives will be always positive. That means what? That itself is what are the positive points. As if at least part of them are achieved also is good for the world. So positive points, negative points of WTO is one side. Various individual aspects of WTO like MFN, NTP, TRIPS, TRIMS, these are all other things. Free trade area means what? Regional trade agreements means what? GATT means what? Doha round means what? These are all various things which can be asked as short questions from this particular unit. With that, we conclude this unit of trade negotiations, and in the next session, we'll continue this discussion on international trade with another unit. Till then, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.